The unfortunate reality of yet another embarrassing Bengals loss on Sunday, this time at the hands of the Chicago Bears, is that the window has closed. Or I should say, a window has closed. Let's talk about it. Hi, hello, and welcome into Ball Don't Lie, episode number 160 of the Ball Don't Lie podcast. My name is Austin Elmore. Thank you for being here. Certainly considering the circumstances, if you're like a lot of Bengals fans, you're probably tired of this team. Last Sunday against the Chicago Bears, that might have been a tipping point for you, a breaking point for you, and I certainly can't blame you because, the way that they lost that game after having this feverish comeback in the last 2 minutes to go ahead, and I think we all kind of knew with 50 seconds and the way the Bengals defense performs, it was probably too much time. The Bears would at the bare minimum have a chance to kick a field goal to win the game. Well, it was actually worse than that. They had a long touchdown to Colston Loveland and some embarrassing attempts at tackling by Geno Stone and most notably Jordan Battle that led to the Bengals losing again and falling to 3-6 as they enter the bye week. I'm not here this week to get into the ins and the outs of what happened in the game specifically. I think it's obvious that the Bengals offense is humming right now. Joe Flacco throwing for 470 yards, the most ever by a quarterback over the age of 40. Jamar Chase had a great game. T. Higgins returned to form and was spectacular in his ball tracking skills, his awareness where he's at on the football field, especially the goal line and the pylon. All of that was really good. The run game was not great, but the Bengals offense is incredibly fun to watch. Joe Flacco, all of it. And I continue to believe that some of the coaching that Zach Taylor has done in the way that they've rebuilt the offense, that they've developed the offensive line, and that they have this unit humming at the level that it's humming, which now, by the way, is 2 straight years of that. I think those two things, that in and of itself is some of the most impressive coaching that I have ever seen from Zach Taylor. And I think it might be enough to save his job. If the offense continues to perform the way that it is, that might be enough for Zach Taylor to save his job. However, if the defense continues to perform the way they are, they're currently on track to be the worst defense in the history of the National Football League. I've talked often about the 2019 Bengals and how that was the worst defense I've ever seen. Well, not anymore. The 2025 Bengals are the worst defensive group I have ever laid my eyes on. When you look at the league leaders in tackles, the Bengals have about, 25 to 30 more, league leaders in missed tackles. The Bengals have, 25 to 30 more as a team in missed tackles. And the top 3 people in the NFL all play for the Bengals when it comes to missed tackles, and nobody has missed more tackles than Jordan Battle. Jordan Battle, of course, missed the tackle where Colston Loveland just bounced right off of him and took it to the house to essentially win the game for the Chicago Bears on Sunday. So the Bengals lose that game, and they lose it in that hilarious and sad and embarrassing fashion, and they do so basically in back-to-back weeks against teams that they had a chance to beat, in the New York Jets, who were winless, and the Chicago Bears, who were fine but had kind of been scuffling offensively. You can't help but think, okay, this is a lost cause now. There's nowhere else for this defense to go. How on earth are they going to dig themselves out of it? And at 3-6, Joe Burrow is now probably not going to come out. The schedule gets really difficult out of the bye. Where exactly does this season go from here? And it's tough, man. It's embarrassing that's the word you're going to hear a lot. It's embarrassing to keep playing the same game over and over each week and to see little to no signs of progress. I don't even know that I'd say little signs of progress for this team. And so when you start losing games like this and the offense continues to perform at a high level, well, then the defense see, now I'm getting so mad again. I'm getting frustrated. My thoughts are getting frazzled. When the offense plays at the level that it's played and the defense continues to do what it does, That's not a recipe for a healthy locker room. And we started to see the cracks after the game on Sunday. So let's talk about that. And then let's get to, okay, where do we go from here, including the NFL trade deadline. So Bengals offense plays great, feverish comeback, special teams is wonderful, get the onside kick. Let's go beat the Chicago Bears. Defense gives it up. So fast forward to the locker room postgame. This is normal. Everybody talks to the media. The media has what's called the open locker room portion. And I shouldn't say everybody talks to the media. It's not common for, it's not uncommon for somebody to say, I don't want to talk today. That happens sometimes, but it's kind of expected that after a game, you'll talk to the media. And so offensive guys are all at their lockers talking. Jamar Chase is talking. Chase Brown is talking. Ted Karras is talking. Joe Flacco talks to the media. Zach Taylor talks to the media. But nobody from the defense wants to talk. Geno Stone doesn't want to talk. Jordan Battle doesn't want to talk. Shamar Stewart doesn't want to talk. None of those guys want to talk. Trey Hendrickson, he didn't play because he was hurt, and maybe if he does play, then the Bengals end up winning that game, but Trey doesn't want to talk either. Well, where's the leadership? Who's going to step up? From my understanding, the only person who talked to the media after the game from the defense was Oren Burks. Oren Burks, who barely played any snaps for the Bengals defense. So on one side of the locker room, you got the offense answering all the questions about how bad does this feel, losing a game like this. And on the other side of the locker room, the defense is ducking. And you can tell there's starting to be some fracturing here. Take a listen to Chase Brown, the Bengals running back, and what he said to the media after the game.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Last play of the game, it sucks, but that's NFL. You got to play to the last second. You can't let up even when you feel like the momentum shifted. So that would be how I'm feeling right now, is just play all the way through. And
what was running through your head walking back to the locker room, Chase? Going through your head?
Probably the same as what was running through your head. Like what the what the
When does that emotion change to just anger, knowing how differently the season could have looked if you closed out the last 2 weeks?
I'd be lying if I said it didn't set us back from where we wanted to be. We want to be. Our mentality was 3-0 going into this bye week, and we could have easily done it. That's the sickening part. It's like we could have easily done it.
One of the tensions, it looks like, is building between the offense and defense, at least from the outside. What do you do as a leader on this team, as someone, to kind of prevent that from happening?
Just don't turn on each other. We know how they can play. They played really well at the start of the season. They did, and they were carrying us on their back. So, now that we're stepping up, I think we just got to play complementary football. We put the ball in the end zone and go up a point at the end, finish the game. Just end it. That's it. That's what we need to do. Just end the game. Make them get us the ball back. Let us go to 22 victory, and let's end the game. That's how I feel.
What the F? What the F? Just finish the effing game. That's not good. Not a good way to look at it. Not a good thing to say as you're looking across the locker room at your defensive mates and they're not talking to the media. So you have to answer for their shortcomings. On top of that, Mike Petraglia of CLNS Media, Bengals reporters, reporting that when the media tried to ask these guys to talk, Shamar Stewart and Jordan Battle and others, they just kind of laughed and shrugged it off and said, "See y'all on Monday." That to me is a sign of immaturity. And here's something that I've heard about the Bengals defense from people that are around the team and with the team. There is a complete lack of culture and a complete lack of leadership on the defensive side of the ball. And instead of it being an environment where grown men are at work, it's more of a ha-ha, funny jokesters and kids just kind of broing around, happy to be in the National Football League. It's not grown men at work. This is where you start to miss the Sam Hubbards, the Von Bells, the Mike Hiltons, the DJ Readers, those type of locker room influences, and even to an extent, Lou Anarumo, because Zach Taylor as a head coach really delegates most of the defense to his defensive coordinator. You treat the defensive coordinator basically like a second head coach. Now, it's not abnormal in the NFL for this to happen. Plenty of teams do this. Offensive-minded head coach really delegates a lot of the defensive duties to the defense and to the defensive coordinator. And that's what Zach Taylor has done with Al Golden. He basically gives Al Golden a chance to be the head coach of the defense and build his staff and his coaches, and they get all on the same page and blah, 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 blah. Well, I don't know that there's a respect for Al Golden. I don't know that there's a respect for his position coaches. I don't know that there's a respect, honestly, for the game of football. Because when you watch this team on defense, they look unprepared. They constantly are out of position. They look surprised frequently. They don't look like they've been studying the film. They don't look like they know what to expect. They are just kind of running around like chickens with their head cut off. There's a couple of different ways to look at this. Number one, is that poor coaching that's putting them in bad positions? Number two, is it poor preparation? Are these guys not doing the film study or communicating effectively in meetings or in practice to do the right things so that you can be a good, impactful professional football player? And the vibe that I get from people that I talk to is that it's really just everyone just shows up and has fun type of mentality on the defense. That it's not a professional setting. It's just kind of a bunch of immature kids. And that would speak volumes, and that would explain a lot about the way this defense has performed so far this season. And so part of that is the issue of the personalities that you have on the team. Part of that is the issue that the coaching staff doesn't command the respect. Part of that is the fact that you just have young players who don't know any better. Part of that is the fact that the guys that are supposed to be the leaders in the locker room aren't leaders in the locker room. Logan Wilson, who has now been traded, was trying to be the leader and was trying to be helpful, but he really seemed like the only one. My understanding is Trey Hendrickson has done very little, and prior to Trey Hendrickson being voted a captain this year, which they really just voted on the guy who had the most experience, Trey Hendrickson wasn't much of a locker room leader or a voice of reason or any of those things prior to this year. Trey's just kind of his own guy, does his own thing, doesn't quite meet those standards or those requirements of being a locker room leader. There are parts of that go into the position groups, and yes, there are parts of Trey that show leadership qualities. But as a guy who commands the locker room as the leader and as the best player, he threw a temper tantrum at training camp this year, didn't show up for half of it, has consistently sparred with people in the media, and is just kind of a lone wolf in and of himself, just kind of does his own thing. B.J. Hill used to be a leader on that defensive line. What's he doing? Where's he at? Where's that group? You know, on the offensive side of the ball, you at least have Jamar. You have Ted Karras. You have Joe Burrow. There are guys on that team that are respected on that side of the ball that other guys look up to. It doesn't feel like that's happening on the Bengals defense. And so when you have a guy like Chase Brown saying what he said and kind of going after the defense, that's a challenge to them. And it's kind of finally saying the quiet part out loud in the way that they responded or didn't respond in the way that they talked to the media. There's a lot of immaturity, there's a lot of culture issues, and there's a lot of leadership issues on the defensive side of the ball. And that's something that needs to be addressed if this team's going to get any better. I don't know if eventually getting embarrassed over and over and over again means that you're going to figure it out and you're going to take it more seriously. I hope it's not gotten to like that point. You would hope that, there's other things in place because, going into a bye week, I don't know what it's going to look like when they come back. There was another thing that bothered me about Sunday and actually Monday is that Zach Taylor kind of criticized Chase Brown for his comments. Those comments that you just heard, Zach wasn't happy with him. He said he addressed it with Chase Brown. And I felt like that's tone deaf of Zach Taylor because Chase Brown spoke for the offense. He spoke for the Bengals fans. He should be speaking for the defense as well. He spoke for everybody who knows anything about this football team. That's how they felt. And while Chase Brown was not perfect on Sunday, he had a couple of big drops. He did say what everybody was thinking, and I think that there's a place for that. Now, did he specifically go after the defense? A little bit. He also praised the defense from the beginning of the year as if to say, we know that they can do it. And Zach Taylor publicly criticized Chase Brown for publicly criticizing the defense. Now, I will say this. Once Monday rolled around, there was an entirely different vibe by those defensive players in the locker room. When asked if Zach Taylor had addressed them not talking to the media or if anything had been different this week, those guys all said no comment. But Geno Stone stuck around and Jordan Battle stuck around. Even Trey Hendrickson talked, and that doesn't happen very often. So here's what I think happened. I think that Chase Brown said what he said to the media, and that pissed off Zach Taylor. And I think Zach Taylor said, we don't air our grievances in the media. It's my job to address this. Let me address it. And so Chase Brown said, fair enough. Zach publicly says, I didn't like that. And then I think Zach probably went in and chewed out the ass of the Bengals defense for not acting like grown men and not talking to the media after the game and not taking accountability. That's my guess as to what happened. And since then, the Bengals defensive players have been more willing to talk. That's my guess. That's my hope, quite frankly, for what happened with this team. So now you're 3-6. You've got these locker room issues. Here comes the trade deadline, and the Bengals trade away one of those guys who has been a veteran in the past in Logan Wilson. They only get a 6th-round pick in exchange for Wilson. I was a little disappointed with that return, but I'm at least happy that Logan gets to go to a place where he will have a chance to play. I don't know Logan Wilson like super well. I don't really know him at all, but when he was a rookie, him and his now wife would come into the pro shop a decent amount and would talk to them a lot. And two really cool people, two really good people, and easy people to root for. And so I hope that Logan Wilson, who I think is just a good-ass dude, goes out to Dallas and balls out and helps them turn that defense around, because that Dallas defense has got plenty of problems of its own, just got better with Logan Wilson and Quinnen Williams. But here's the thing, like, Logan is an integral part in the success of this Bengals team over the last few years. And now there's only 3 guys left on the defense that played in Super Bowl 56, which is kind of hard to imagine just a few years later. But that's the unfortunate reality of the NFL. And so think about that. February of 22 is when Super Bowl 56 was played. Now pretty much all of the defensive players except for 3 from that team are no longer with the NFL or with the Bengals. That's the NFL, right? That's how it goes. But it's also a reminder of where we're at right now. So the Bengals are 3-6. They're struggling. They're far behind. It doesn't feel like they're going anywhere. The loss to the Bears, to me, was closing the window on the initial portion of the Burrow era. I look at it in like 5-year spurts, right? So Burrow gets here in 2020. Here we are at the end of 2025. They had a Super Bowl appearance. They had an AFC Championship game appearance. And Burrow also had 3 season-ending injuries. Difficult to deal with, but there was some success. There was some stuff to build on. Now, we've kind of shifted into phase 2. Burrow's gotten his contract. Chase has gotten his contract. Higgins has gotten his contract. And the Bengals go into 2026, as of right now, with about $64 million in cap space. That's enough to supplement your roster with good players in free agency and also build through the draft. Now, are you going to get the worst defense in the history of the NFL turned around in 1 year? No, that's not possible, especially when you have other needs that are going to be coming up and guys that you're not going to re-sign or you will re-sign, or who knows what's going to happen with Trey Hendrickson. But it's not like they're going to have to just settle for sucking ass for the next two weeks or next 2 years. Like, there is a path for them to remain competitive. And so, to me, the first phase of the Burrow era, that window is now shut. Any idea or belief that they can be good in the immediate future is over. Burrow should not return this season. There's nothing to play for. You got to now start looking towards, okay, how can we get the best players in the draft? How can we allocate these funds? And how can we turn the page so that this is not a prolonged rebuild because of the amount of space that we have? By the way, the unlocks, the restructures for Joe Burrow's contract that are kind of built into that deal haven't even taken effect yet. So it will be ultimately more than $64 million that they have. Maybe looking closer to 75 to 80 perhaps once they make some roster moves down the stretch. So there is room for them to kind of build the roster similarly to what they did in 2021. So the unfortunate reality, though, is that you've ended this first phase, this first window, with nothing to show for it. You did get one trophy in the trophy case. You got an AFC Championship trophy. Burrow got a Comeback Player of the Year trophy. Jamar Chase got a Rookie of the Year. That's cool. Those are things to be excited about and to be happy about. But it feels like you're going further and further away from who you're supposed to be. And what I hoped would happen following the Bears' loss would be an admission by the Bengals that, hey, we've screwed this up. It's time to start looking to next year. I wanted them to wave the white flag. Yep, our fault. We fucked this up. Sorry. But instead, they trade Logan Wilson to Dallas, and that's it. When in reality, they should have been trading Cam Taylor-Britt, B.J. Hill, Trey Hendrickson, all those guys. Get as much draft capital as you can, clear as much cap space as you can, and start over right now. Now, the ideal thing, in an ideal world, it would be that Duke Tobin gets fired. Duke Tobin has been with the Bengals since 1999. He has accomplished nothing. I've talked extensively about the way the Bengals are uniquely structured and the impact that Tobin has. Tobin, I think, deserves a lot of the blame for the where this team is at right now. I can understand and appreciate and make sense of the blame being aimed at Zach Taylor. And if you want to fire him, okay. I would have a hard time arguing against it, but I don't think that that's going to happen. I think the Bengals are going to stand by Zach Taylor. I think they believe in him, especially offensively and especially the way that this has gone. But if this continues to unravel the way it is defensively, I have a hard time believing Al Golden's going to keep his job. I have a hard time believing some of these defenders on the team are going to keep their job. And I have a hard time believing that the Bengals aren't looking hard and aren't thinking long and hard about the future of Duke Tobin. Now, I think Duke is insulated. I think he's a part of the family. I think that's an issue, but I do think that's where they stand. I just hope that the Bengals aren't going to keep trying to squeeze the juice out of the orange from the last 5 years because it's over. That phase of Bengals football, over. It's not here. It's not coming back. You now have to adapt. You have to find a plan that works better than just let's throw all the young guys out there and see what we have. You've got to supplement your roster again with veterans that can provide an impact. You've got to start hitting on these draft picks, and you've got to start building a defense that is at the very least respectable. And so you've got to enter into phase 2. You've got to reach over in the cart and pull out a new orange. It's time to start squeezing juice out of something else because there's nothing left in that first one. And listen, in the blink of an eye, you go from 2020 Burrow's rookie year to where we're at right now. It goes fast in the National Football League. And the Burrow contract is up in 2029. The Chase contract is up in 2029. The Higgins contract is up in 2028. Like, this is the time that you've got to get going. You've got to turn it around right now if you want to get anything out of the Burrow era. There was a report, I shouldn't say a report, there was a conversation had by Mike Florio on Pro Football Talk Live about the idea that there's some maybe conversations being had about Duke Tobin potentially losing his job. I think he's speculating. I don't think he's reporting it. I don't think he's saying it as fact. But the fact that a national guy like Mike Florio is saying that about Duke Tobin, I think it's worth noting that maybe there is some pressure internally on the Bengals director of player personnel, Duke Tobin. NFL trade deadline has come and gone. And like I said, the Bengals only traded Logan Wilson. They should have traded a bunch of other guys. But that's where we're at. We're at a crossroads with this franchise right now, and they've got to decide, are we ready to pivot into the next phase of what this is going to be? Or are we just going to try to keep doing the same shit over and over and over again? This season is no longer about winning football games. This season is about evaluating the talent that you have, starting to look towards the draft, and figuring out how you can replace the bad apples with good ones. And that includes moving on from guys like maybe Orlando Brown Jr., maybe Jordan Battle. They need a lot of help. They need a lot of turnover, and they've got their work cut out for them. It's unfortunate that it has crashed and burned and ended the way that it has. But you can't keep trying to rebuild the plane that's already been destroyed. You've got to go find somewhere else. You've got to find a different way to get back up in the air. I don't know if that analogy makes any sense, but crash and burn, you got to start over. You got to have a plan that's better than, we'll just see what the young guys can do. And I hope that the leadership in the locker room starts to emerge, whether that's from those young guys, whether it's from the coaching staff, whether it's from the front office, in some way, shape, or form. This team has a long, long way to go. And it sucks that losing, and they're going to have a losing season for the first time since 2020. And that's a blessing in and of itself, and I'm thankful for that. But I'll tell you one thing, over the last 10, 15, 20 years, the Bengals haven't had a lot of back-to-back losing seasons. They haven't. They had it in 19 and 20, and that was the last time they had it. Before that, it's been a long time. So there needs to be something done. Actually, I think about it, 18 was a losing season, 19 was a losing season, 20 was a losing season. And that led to significant change, right? 18 and 19 specifically. So you can't wait around for a second losing season, a third losing season, whatever it might be. You've got to be aggressive in your pursuit of a championship. And I hope that if, people keep canceling their season tickets and people stop coming to games, if all that happens, I hope there's somebody within that building that says, okay, this plan's not working. How can we pivot into one that we can get us back to being competitive very quickly? Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Ball Don't Lie podcast. If you liked what you heard, you can hear me weekdays on ESPN 1530. I co-host a show called Tony Pike's Cincy 360. You can hear it from noon to 3 each and every day. Also follow me on anything and everything at Auty Elmore, AUTYELMORE. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Ball Don't Lie podcast. As always, have fun, be safe, go Bucks.